The dust cloud billowing from beneath hooves announced Mei Lin's arrival to Silver Creek before she'd even crossed the town limits. Exhausted and aching from weeks of travel, her eyes scanned the bustling main street with a mixture of hope and trepidation. America, her new beginning, looked nothing like the paintings in the books her father had shown her back in China. The year was 1885, and Silver Creek, Wyoming, was as foreign to her as the stars would be to a fish. Mei Lin Dao adjusted her small satchel containing all her worldly possessions and smoothed her simple blue dress, the fabric worn from the journey. Her aunt and uncle had paid for her passage to America, promising work in their laundry business. But the letter with their address had been damaged on the journey, the ink blurred beyond recognition, leaving her with only the name of the town, Silver Creek. She approached a group of men lounging outside the general store, gathering her courage and the few English words she had practiced endlessly on the ship. "Please, help me. Find Dao family," she asked, her words careful but heavily accented. The men exchanged glances, and one of them, a red-faced man with a thick mustache, let out a harsh laugh. "What's that, little lady? You looking for a cow?" he mocked, exaggerating her pronunciation. The others joined in his laughter, their voices grating against Mei Lin's already frayed nerves. "Dao. My family name," she tried again, pointing to herself. "Dao. Sounds like she wants to buy a dog." Another man chimed in, spurring another round of cruel laughter. Tears threatened to spill from Mei Lin's eyes. Weeks of travel, of seasickness, of fear, and this was her welcome to the land of opportunity. She clutched her satchel tighter, her knuckles whitening with the effort to keep her composure. "I believe the lady is looking for the Dao family." A deep voice cut through the laughter. The men fell silent as a tall figure emerged from the shadow of the general store porch. The stranger's face was partially hidden beneath the brim of a worn leather hat, but Mei Lin could see kind eyes in a sun-weathered face. He was dressed like the others' denim pants, a button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled to reveal tanned forearms and a leather vest. But something about the way he carried himself set him apart. "You fellas ought to show some respect," the man continued, his voice carrying a gentle warning. "Not everyone's born speaking English." He turned to Mei Lin and removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "Madam, I know the Dao family. They run the laundry 2 streets over. I'd be happy to take you there." Mei Lin's relief was so palpable she swayed slightly on her feet. "Thank you," she managed in English before switching to her native tongue to express her gratitude more fully. The red-faced man snorted. "Can't understand a word she's saying, Marshall. Don't know why you're bothering." The man called Marshall replaced his hat and gave Mei Lin a gentle smile that reached his eyes. "I understand her just fine," he said firmly, offering his arm in a gentlemanly gesture. "This way, Miss Dao." Marshall Vaughn had not planned to play escort to a lost Chinese immigrant that afternoon, but something about the courage in the young woman's eyes had stirred something inside him. He had seen it before, that particular mixture of determination and vulnerability that marked those who had left everything behind for a chance at a new life. He guided her down the dusty main street, aware of the curious glances from townspeople. Silver Creek wasn't a large settlement, and newcomers, especially foreign ones, drew attention. "Marshall Vaughn," he introduced himself, tapping his chest. "And you are Mei Lin Dao," she replied carefully, each syllable deliberate. "I am. Grateful. No need for thanks, Miss Dao." Silver Creek ain't always the most welcoming place, but it's home. You'll find good folks here if you look past the rough edges. Mei Lin nodded, though Marshall wasn't sure how much she understood. She was young, perhaps 20 or 21, with delicate features framed by dark hair pulled back in a simple style. Despite her travel-worn appearance, there was a quiet dignity about her that commanded respect. They turned onto a narrower street lined with smaller businesses. Marshall pointed to a modest wooden building with a sign reading Dao Laundry in both English and Chinese characters. "Here we are," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Your family's place." Mei Lin's face lit up with recognition and relief at the familiar characters. She bowed slightly to Marshall, a gesture of deep respect in her culture. "Thank you, you are, kind man." The words were simple, but her eyes conveyed depths of gratitude that transcended language barriers. Marshall tipped his hat. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Miss Dao. I hope you find what you're looking for here." As he turned to leave, the door to the laundry opened, and an older Chinese couple emerged. Their faces transformed with joy at the sight of Mei Lin, and rapid Cantonese filled the air as they embraced their niece. Marshall smiled at the reunion, tipping his hat once more before heading back toward the main street. He had fence posts to deliver to the Carson Ranch by sundown, and the day wasn't getting any younger. What he didn't realize as he walked away was that his simple act of kindness had planted a seed that would grow into something neither he nor Mei Lin could have anticipated. The next few days passed in a whirlwind for Mei Lin as she settled into life with her aunt and uncle. The small room behind the laundry became her new home, modest but clean, with a narrow bed and a small chest for her few belongings. Her aunt, Dayu, and uncle, Chen, welcomed her warmly, grateful for the extra hands in their growing business. Silver Creek, Mei Lin learned, had been their home for 7 years. They had arrived during the railroad expansion, seeking opportunity like so many others. When the tracks were completed, they stayed, opening the laundry to serve the growing town. They worked hard, kept to themselves, and built a respectable business despite the occasional hostility from townsfolk who viewed Chinese immigrants with suspicion. By her 4th day in Silver Creek, Mei Lin had established a routine. She rose before dawn to help stoke the fires beneath the large copper boiling pots. Her hands, once soft from her sheltered life in China, quickly developed calluses from scrubbing rough fabrics against washboards. The work was exhausting but satisfying, each clean garment a small victory. Each coin earned a step toward security. On this particular morning, she was hanging sheets to dry in the small yard behind the laundry when a familiar voice called her name. "Miss Dao." She turned to find Marshall Vaughn standing at the edge of the yard, hat in hand. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly than during their first meeting. He was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps 30, with kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners, suggesting he smiled often. His brown hair was neatly trimmed, though slightly tousled from the hat. "Mr. Vaughn," she greeted, carefully pronouncing his name as she had practiced. She gestured to the laundry. "You have clothes for wash?" "No, madam," he replied with a smile. "I actually brought something for you." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a worn book. "It's an English primer. Thought it might help you with your words." Mei Lin's eyes widened as she approached, wiping her damp hands on her apron. She took the book reverently, opening it to find simple illustrations paired with English words. A rush of emotion tightened her throat. In this simple gesture was acknowledgement of her struggle and a hand extended in friendship. "Thank you," she said softly, meeting his eyes. "This is very kind. My mother taught school before she passed," Marshall explained. "She always said education was the greatest gift you could give a person. Figured she'd approve." Mei Lin nodded, understanding the sentiment if not every word. "Your mother, wise woman." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the town coming to life, wagon wheels on packed dirt, the blacksmith's hammer, the call of merchants opening their shops. "I should let you get back to your work," Marshall said finally. "Just wanted to see how you were settling in." "I am good. Work is much," she made a gesture with her hands to indicate quantity, "but good." Marshall nodded. "Well, if you need anything, I'm usually around. My ranch is just north of town, the Double V." He pointed vaguely in that direction. "Not much, but it's home." "Double V," she repeated. "For Vaughn." "That's right." He smiled, impressed by her quick understanding. "Named for my pa and me. He started it 20 years ago when this was still wild country." Mei Lin wanted to ask more about his family, his life, this country that was so different from her own, but her limited English frustrated her. She resolved to study the primer diligently. "I study," she promised, holding up the book. "Next time, more words." Marshall's smile broadened. "I look forward to that, Miss Dao." He replaced his hat and gave a small bow that mirrored her own gesture of respect from days earlier. "Good day to you." As he walked away, Mei Lin hugged the book to her chest. In a town where she had felt invisible except for the occasional hostile stare, Marshall Vaughn had seen her and had reached out with kindness. It was a gift greater than any book. She returned to hanging laundry, but her thoughts remained with the cowboy whose gentle eyes seemed to understand what her broken English could not yet express. The weeks that followed developed a pattern. Marshall would stop by the laundry every few days, ostensibly to drop off or pick up clothing, but his visits always included time spent with Mei Lin. He would point to objects and name them, patiently repeating words until she mastered their pronunciation. She, in turn, taught him a few phrases in her language, laughing softly at his attempts. Spring blossomed into early summer, and with it, Mei Lin's English improved dramatically. She devoured the primer Marshall had given her, practicing late into the night by lamplight. Her aunt and uncle noticed the cowboy's frequent visits and exchanged knowing glances, but said nothing, grateful that their niece had found a friend in this foreign land. On a warm June afternoon, Marshall arrived at the laundry with his usual gentle smile, but an unusual request. "Miss Dao," he began, his hat in his hands as always when speaking with her, "there's to be a town social this Saturday evening. Music, dancing, food. I wondered if you might do me the honor of attending with me." Mei Lin paused in folding a shirt, her heart suddenly racing. A social meant people, many people, and while her English had improved, she remained self-conscious about speaking in public. Not sure," she admitted, searching for the right words. "People here, they not all kind like you." Marshall's expression softened with understanding. "I know it's asking a lot, and you're right, some folks in Silver Creek are set in their ways, but others are good people who just haven't had the chance to know you." He stepped closer, his voice earnest. "I'd be proud to have you on my arm, Miss Dao. And anyone who can't see what a remarkable person you are isn't worth worrying about." Warmth spread through Mei Lin's chest at his words. No one had ever called her remarkable before. In China, she had been just one of many daughters, expected to be obedient and eventually marry according to her family's wishes. The marriage arrangement had fallen through when her intended's family lost their fortune, leading to her journey to America. Here, despite the hardships, she had found a freedom she had never known, and now a man who saw her value. "I will go," she decided, straightening her shoulders, "but I have nothing to wear for social." Marshall's face brightened. "As for that, I may have a solution. My sister Deanna left some dresses when she moved to Denver after her wedding. I reckon she wouldn't mind if one found a new owner." Mei Lin hesitated. "I cannot take your sister's dress." "Not take, borrow," Marshall clarified with a gentle smile. "Though if it fits and you like it, Consider it a gift. Deanna has more dresses than sense now that she's married to that banker." His teasing tone made Mei Lin laugh, a sound that seemed to please Marshall greatly, judging by the way his eyes crinkled at the corners. "I bring it tomorrow," he promised. "You can decide then." After getting permission from her aunt and uncle, who seemed unusually enthusiastic about the invitation, Mei Lin agreed to Marshall's plan. True to his word, he returned the next day with a carefully wrapped package containing a dress of pale blue cotton, simple but pretty, with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. "It's not fancy," Marshall apologized as Mei Lin examined it with wonder, "but I thought the color might suit you." "It is beautiful," she assured him, running her fingers over the soft fabric. "Thank you." Saturday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures perfect for an outdoor social. Mei Lin spent extra time preparing, washing her hair with rosemary water and arranging it in a style that blended Chinese tradition with American fashion, as she had seen in illustrations. The dress fit as though made for her, requiring only minor adjustments that her skilled hands completed easily. When Marshall arrived to escort her, his reaction was worth every moment of anxiety. He stood speechless for a moment, his eyes wide with appreciation. "Miss Dao," he finally managed, "you look absolutely beautiful." The sincerity in his voice brought a blush to her cheeks. "Thank you," she replied softly. "You are handsome too." Marshall had clearly made an effort with his appearance. His usually practical attire had been replaced with a clean white shirt, dark vest, and polished boots. His hair was neatly combed and he smelled faintly of pine soap. He offered his arm with a small bow. "Shall we?" As they walked toward the town square where the social was being held, Mei Lin was acutely aware of the stares they attracted. Some were merely curious, others openly disapproving. She held tighter to Marshall's arm, drawing strength from his steady presence. "People are looking," she whispered. "Let them look," he replied, covering her hand with his own. "They'll see a beautiful woman and a very fortunate man enjoying an evening together. Nothing wrong with that." The social was already in full swing when they arrived. Lanterns hung from tree branches, casting a warm glow over the square. Tables laden with food lined one side, while a small band of local musicians played lively tunes on the other. Couples danced in the center, their movements creating a swirling pattern of color and motion. Marshall led Mei Lin to the refreshment table where he procured 2 cups of punch. "Drink slowly," he advised with a wink. "Old Mrs. Henderson always adds extra apple brandy when the preacher isn't looking." Mei Lin sipped cautiously, the sweet liquid warming her throat. "It is good," she declared, earning a chuckle from Marshall. They found a relatively quiet spot at the edge of the gathering, where Marshall pointed out various townspeople, sharing small anecdotes about each. Mei Lin listened intently, absorbing the information and matching names to faces. This was her community now, and understanding its dynamics was important to her. "That's Doc Miller and his wife Dorothy," Marshall explained, nodding toward an older couple. "Best physician for 100 miles, though he complains he's getting too old for midnight calls. And over there's Mayor Wilson, more interested in his poker game than actual governing, but harmless enough." Mei Lin was about to ask a question when a shadow fell across them. 3 men had approached, led by the red-faced man who had mocked her English on her first day in town. "Well, well," the man drawled, his voice carrying a note of disdain. "Marshall Vaughn and his Chinese doll, quite a picture you two make." Marshall straightened, his expression hardening though his voice remained level. "Evening, Harmon. Don't recall asking for your opinion on my company." Harmon Blackwell. Mei Lin now knew from Marshall's descriptions, owned the largest saloon in town, and had a reputation for meanness when drunk, which was often. "Just thinking of your standing, Vaughn," Harmon continued with mock concern. "What would your pa think, seeing you squiring around a foreigner? Man worked hard to build a respectable name in these parts." Marshall's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Mei Lin spoke up. "My name is Mei Lin Dao," she said clearly, her accent present but her words precise. "Not foreigner, not doll. I am person same as you." Harmon looked momentarily taken aback by her direct address before recovering with a sneer. "Listen to that gibberish, can't even speak proper English." "Her English is a sight better than your manners, Blackwell," Marshall retorted, his free hand curling into a fist at his side. Sensing the escalating tension, Mei Lin laid a gentle hand on Marshall's arm. "Dance now," she suggested, her eyes conveying a clear message. "This man is not worth a fight." Marshall's expression softened as he looked down at her, understanding passing between them. "I'd be honored," he replied, deliberately turning his back on Harmon and leading Mei Lin toward the dancing area. As they walked away, they could hear Harmon's parting shot. "She's probably just after your land, Vaughn. These Chinese are crafty that way." The music had shifted to a slower waltz, and couples moved in graceful circles around the cleared space. Mei Lin hesitated at the edge. "I do not know this dance," she admitted. Marshall smiled, all tension from the confrontation melting away. "It's simple enough. I'll lead, you follow." He positioned her hand on his shoulder, took her other hand in his, and placed his free hand lightly at her waist. "Just 3 steps like this." He began to move, counting softly. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. After a few stumbling attempts, Mei Lin caught the rhythm, and they were soon moving smoothly among the other dancers. The sensation of being held, of moving in harmony with another person, was exhilarating. Marshall was a capable dancer, guiding her with subtle pressure, his eyes never leaving hers. "You learn quickly," he observed, genuine admiration in his voice. "Good teacher," she replied with a smile. As they danced, the rest of the gathering seemed to fade away, the stares, the whispers, even Harmon's unpleasantness. There was only music, movement, and the undeniable connection growing between them. When the song ended, neither moved immediately to break apart. Marshall's hand remained at her waist, warm and steady. "Thank you," Mei Lin said softly, "for bringing me tonight." "Thank you for coming," he replied. "It means a great deal to me." Before they could say more, the band struck up another tune, faster this time. Other dancers moved around them, and the spell was broken. Marshall reluctantly stepped back but kept hold of her hand. "Would you like to see the stars?" he asked impulsively. "There's a hill just beyond the square where you can see for miles." The invitation held meaning beyond the simple words, and they both knew it. This was a step toward something more than friendship, more than English lessons and casual visits. Mei Lin took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I would like that very much." Hand in hand, they slipped away from the social, leaving behind the lanterns and music for the quiet promise of starlight. The hill Marshall led her to offered a sweeping view of Silver Creek and the surrounding countryside. Moonlight bathed the landscape in silver, transforming the familiar town into something magical. They settled on a flat rock, their shoulders almost touching. "It's beautiful," Mei Lin breathed, tilting her head back to take in the vast expanse of stars. "In all my years here, I never tire of this view," Marshall admitted. "Makes a man feel small but part of something grand at the same time." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the distant sounds of the social providing a faint backdrop to the night sounds: crickets, an occasional owl, the soft rustle of the breeze through prairie grass. "I'm sorry about Harmon," Marshall said finally. "What he said was unforgivable." Mei Lin shook her head. I have heard worse, in China, in Journey here, even in Silver Creek. She turned to face him directly. What matters is not what others say, but what we do. You were kind when others laughed. You saw me when others looked away. Her heartfelt words hung in the air between them, weighted with emotion that transcended language barriers. Marshall reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. From the moment I saw you standing up to those fools with your head high, I knew you were someone special, Mei Lin Dao. It was the first time he had used her given name without the formal miss, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent a pleasant shiver through her. You say my name right, she observed with a small smile. I've been practicing, he admitted, returning her smile. Just like you've been practicing your English. Their eyes held for a long moment, the connection between them almost tangible in the moonlight. Marshall leaned forward slightly, his intention clear but his movement hesitant, giving her every opportunity to turn away. Mei Lin closed the distance between them, pressing her lips gently to his. The kiss was brief, but filled with promise, a beginning rather than an end. When they parted, Marshall's eyes were wide with wonder and something deeper, something that made Mei Lin's heart race. I've been wanting to do that since you corrected my pronunciation of laundry last week, he confessed with a soft laugh. Why wait so long? She teased, her usual shyness melting away in the warmth of the moment. A gentleman doesn't rush a lady, he replied, his tone mock serious. Besides, I wasn't entirely sure you felt the same way. Mei Lin raised an eyebrow. For smart man, you can be very foolish. Marshall threw his head back and laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Fair enough. I won't make that mistake again. He kissed her once more, this time with more confidence, his hand coming up to cradle her face with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. In his touch was respect, admiration, and the beginnings of love, everything she had never dared hope to find so far from home. When they eventually returned to the social, hand in hand and slightly flushed, the stares seemed less important. Let them look, Mei Lin thought. They see only Chinese girl and American cowboy. They do not see what we see in each other. The night ended with Marshall escorting her back to the laundry, where her aunt and uncle waited up, pretending they weren't watching through the window. At the door, he kissed her hand in a formal gesture that contradicted the intensity in his eyes. May I call on you tomorrow? He asked. Properly with your uncle's permission, Mei Lin nodded, happiness bubbling up inside her like a spring. Yes, I would like that. As she watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the moonlit street, Mei Lin knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, prejudice, cultural differences, language barriers, they would face them together. In a land that had often seemed cold and unwelcoming, she had found warmth in Marshall Vaughn's steady gaze and gentle heart, and that was worth all the difficult journeys in the world. True to his word, Marshall arrived the next day, Sunday, dressed in his best clothes and bearing a small bouquet of wildflowers. He formally requested permission from Uncle Chen to court Mei Lin, conducting himself with such respectful sincerity that even her traditional uncle was impressed. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Silver Creek had seen before. Marshall made no attempt to hide his feelings for Mei Lin, escorting her to church, taking her on picnics by the creek, and spending evenings on the small porch behind the laundry, talking for hours. For every cruel comment or disapproving glance from townsfolk, there were moments of unexpected kindness, Mrs. Miller inviting Mei Lin to join the ladies' sewing circle, the blacksmith's wife stopping by with fresh baked bread, the schoolteacher offering additional English lessons. Summer deepened, and with it, so did their relationship. Marshall taught Mei Lin to ride, patiently instructing her on a gentle mare from his ranch. She taught him to use chopsticks, laughing as he struggled with the unfamiliar utensils. They shared stories of their childhoods as filled with open plains and cattle drives, hers with ancient traditions and crowded cities. Different worlds, but they found common ground in their values: hard work, respect, and loyalty. One particularly hot August afternoon, Marshall picked Mei Lin up in his wagon, a mysterious smile playing at his lips. "Where are we going?" she asked, her English now fluid though still accented. "It's a surprise," he replied, offering no further explanation as they set off toward the north of town. After about 30 minutes of travel, they crested a hill, and Marshall brought the wagon to a stop. Below them stretched a modest ranch, the Double V. Mei Lin had seen it from a distance before but had never visited. A small but well-maintained house stood at the center, surrounded by a barn, corral, and outbuildings. Fields of grass extended toward distant hills, dotted with cattle. "My home," Marshall said simply. "Not grand, but it's good land. My father chose well when he settled here." Mei Lin took in the scene with appreciation. "It is beautiful, peaceful. I hoped you'd think so." He turned to face her fully, something serious in his expression. "Mei Lin, I brought you here today because I want you to really see it before I ask you something important." Her heart began to race as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. Unwrapping it carefully, he revealed a ring, a simple silver band with a small pearl. "This was my mother's," he explained, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "My father gave it to her when they were starting out with nothing but dreams and determination. I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife." Mei Lin's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. She had hoped, had dreamed, but to hear the words spoken aloud made her heart soar. "Before you answer," Marshall continued, "you should know what you'd be agreeing to. Life on a ranch isn't easy. There's never enough time, never enough hands. The winters are harsh and the summers aren't much kinder. And I can't promise that everyone will accept us. There will always be people like Harmon Blackwell in this world." He took her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "But I can promise you this. I will love you every day of my life. I will stand beside you against anyone who tries to harm you. I will work until my hands bleed to give you a good home. And I will never, not once, regret choosing you as my partner in this life." Tears spilled freely down Mei Lin's cheeks now, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Marshall Vaughn, I will be your wife." His face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. He gathered her into his arms, kissing her with a fervor that spoke of all the tomorrows they would share. When they finally parted, breathless and laughing, Marshall pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Mei Lin Dao." "And I love you, Marshall Vaughn," she replied, the words simple but profound in their truth. They sat together on that hillside for hours, planning their future. Marshall would speak to the minister about a wedding date. Mei Lin would continue working at the laundry until then, saving every penny to contribute to their household. They would face whatever came their way together. As the sun began to set, painting the landscape in gold and crimson, they reluctantly prepared to return to town. Mei Lin took one last look at the ranch, her future home, and felt a sense of peace settle over her. It was not the life she had imagined when leaving China, but it was a life filled with promise and love. And that was more than enough. News of their engagement spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Reactions were mixed, as expected. Some, like Doc and Mrs. Miller, offered genuine congratulations. Others gossiped behind their hands about the impropriety of such a match. Harmon Blackwell and his cronies were openly hostile, suggesting that Marshall had lost his mind or that Mei Lin had somehow bewitched him. Through it all, Marshall remained steadfast. When the minister initially hesitated to perform the ceremony, citing concerns about mixed marriages, Marshall simply stated that they would find another preacher or marry before a judge. Faced with Marshall's determination and the unexpected support of several prominent townspeople, including Mayor Wilson, the minister reluctantly agreed. The wedding was set for early October, when the ranch work would slow with the changing seasons. Mei Lin's aunt took charge of her bridal preparations, altering a dress pattern to incorporate both American style and traditional Chinese elements. Marshall, meanwhile, worked dawn to dusk getting the ranch house ready, adding a new room and fresh paint, determined that Mei Lin's first impression of her new home would be one of welcome. On the morning of their wedding day, Mei Lin woke before dawn, too excited to sleep. She dressed carefully in the gown she and her aunt had created, ivory silk with delicate red embroidery at the hem and sleeves, symbols of good fortune and happiness from her homeland. Her hair was arranged simply but elegantly, adorned with small pearl pins that matched her engagement ring. Aunt Dayu helped her prepare, her usually stoic expression softened with emotion. "Your parents would be proud," she said in Cantonese, adjusting a fold in the dress. "You have found your path in this strange land." "Thank you for everything," Mei Lin replied in their shared language. "Without you and Uncle Chen, I would have nothing." "You would have found your way," her aunt assured her with unexpected warmth. "You have always been stronger than you knew." The ceremony was held in the small church on the edge of town. To Mei Lin's surprise and Marshall's evident pleasure, the building was nearly full. Friends, neighbors, and customers from the laundry had come to witness their union. Even more touching was the presence of several of Marshall's ranch hands and fellow cattlemen, who stood respectfully at the back in their best clothes, hats in hand. As Uncle Chen walked her down the aisle, Mei Lin's eyes found Marshall waiting at the altar. He stood tall and proud in a new black suit, his expression transforming to one of wonder as he saw her. In that moment, the journey that had brought her across an ocean to this small town in Wyoming made perfect sense. All paths had led here to this man, to this life they would build together. The minister performed the ceremony with more grace than Mei Lin had expected, speaking clearly so she could follow every word of the vows she had practiced diligently. When Marshall slipped the simple gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady but his eyes shone with unshed tears. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the minister declared, and Marshall didn't wait for permission to kiss his bride. He gathered Mei Lin close, his kiss a promise sealed before God and community. They emerged from the church to cheers and handfuls of rice thrown in blessing. Marshall helped her into the decorated wagon that would take them to their new home, his touch reverent as though she might vanish if he blinked. The small reception at the Double V Ranch was a blend of cultures, American fiddle music alongside dishes prepared by Mei Lin's aunt, according to recipes from home. Wine flowed freely, and even those who had been skeptical of the match seemed won over by the obvious happiness of the bride and groom. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, guests began to depart, leaving the newlyweds to begin their life together. Marshall led Mei Lin through their home, no longer his, but theirs, proudly showing the improvements he had made. The kitchen with its new cook stove, the bedroom with the handcrafted bed frame he'd commissioned from the town carpenter, the small study where he had placed her books and writing materials alongside his ledgers. "What do you think?" he asked, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "Will it suit you?" Mei Lin turned a slow circle, taking in the modest but comfortable home. Through the windows, she could see the ranch spreading out in all directions, the land they would work together, the place where their children would someday play. "It is perfect," she said, stepping into his embrace. "It is home." Marshall's arms tightened around her, his chin resting on top of her head. "Welcome home, Mrs. Vaughn." The name, her new name, filled her with a sense of belonging she had scarcely dared to hope for when she had arrived in Silver Creek just months before. From lost and alone to found, and beloved, the journey had been short in time but immeasurable in meaning. As night fell on the Double V Ranch, the newlyweds stood on their porch, watching stars appear in the vast Wyoming sky. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together, the cowboy who had understood her when others only heard broken English, and the woman who had crossed an ocean to find her heart's home. Years passed, and the story of Marshall and Mei Lin Vaughn became part of Silver Creek's history. Their marriage, once the subject of gossip and disapproval, grew into an example of devotion that even the most hardened skeptics could not deny. The Double V prospered under their joint care. Marshall's knowledge of cattle and land, combined with Mei Lin's meticulous attention to detail and financial acumen, proved a formidable partnership. They expanded the ranch, adding more grazing land and improving the breeding stock. When drought threatened in their third year of marriage, it was Mei Lin who suggested digging additional wells and implementing irrigation techniques she had learned about in China. Their ranch remained green when others withered, and neighbors soon followed their example. Their family grew alongside their ranch. Their first child, a daughter they named Lily after Marshall's mother, arrived in the second year of their marriage. She had her father's thoughtful brown eyes and her mother's delicate features, a perfect blend of both worlds. 2 years later, they welcomed a son, William Chen Vaughn, named for both Marshall's father and Mei Lin's uncle. A second daughter, Deanna Rose, completed their family 3 years after that. The children grew up bilingual, switching effortlessly between English and Cantonese, much to the amazement of townspeople. They attended the local school, where they faced occasional taunts about their mixed heritage, but they had inherited their parents' resilience and dignity. More importantly, they had the unwavering support of a community that had, over time, come to respect the Vaughn family for their contributions to Silver Creek's prosperity. Harmon Blackwell remained a thorn in their side for several years, but his influence waned as his saloon business declined, due in no small part to his increasingly erratic behavior and Marshall's quiet campaign to establish a rival establishment with fairer practices. When Blackwell finally left town after losing his property to gambling debts, few mourned his departure. In 1895, 10 years after Mei Lin's arrival in Silver Creek, she and Marshall hosted a celebration at the Double V. The occasion was dual purpose: to mark their 10th wedding anniversary and to celebrate Mei Lin becoming an American citizen. The naturalization process had been long and complicated, but Marshall had insisted on hiring a lawyer from Cheyenne to navigate the bureaucratic maze of the Chinese Exclusion Act and its exceptions. The party was attended by nearly everyone in Silver Creek, a testament to how far they had come from the days when Mei Lin had been mocked for her broken English. The town's new mayor, Doc Miller, who had finally been persuaded to take on civic responsibilities, made a speech praising the Vaughns for their contributions to the community. Aunt Dayu and Uncle Chen, now semi-retired with their laundry business managed primarily by cousins who had joined them from China, beamed with pride. As twilight descended on the gathering, Marshall found his wife standing alone on their porch, watching the celebration with a contented smile. Their children played with friends in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Vaughn," he asked, wrapping an arm around her waist. Mei Lin leaned into his embrace, still marveling at how perfectly they fit together after all these years. "I was thinking about the day we met," she admitted. "How lost I felt, how frightened, and then there you were, understanding me when no one else would try." Marshall's arm tightened around her. "Best day of my life, though I didn't know it at the time. Just knew I couldn't stand by and watch them treat you that way." "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, turning to face him. "All the difficulties we've faced because of our marriage." Marshall studied her face, still as beautiful to him as it had been on their wedding day, though now bearing the subtle marks of motherhood and the Wyoming sun. "Not for a single moment," he replied with absolute conviction. "Every challenge has been worth it because it brought us here together with our children and this life we've built." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, the gesture achingly familiar after a decade of marriage. "Do you regret it? Staying in Silver Creek, instead of continuing to San Francisco as you'd planned?" Mei Lin smiled, remembering how she had confessed that original plan to him during their courtship, how Silver Creek had been meant as only a temporary stop to earn money before continuing west to the larger Chinese community in California. "Never," she said softly. "My journey ended exactly where it was supposed to, with you." Marshall lowered his head to kiss her, the tenderness of the gesture belying the passion that still sparked between them. "I love you, Mei Lin Vaughn, more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "And I love you, Marshall Vaughn," she replied in the familiar exchange that had become their daily affirmation. "Always and completely." From the yard came the sound of their eldest daughter calling for them to join the dancing that had started. Marshall offered his arm with a playful bow. "Shall we show these youngsters how it's done, Mrs. Vaughn?" Mei Lin took his arm with a laugh. "Lead and I will follow." As they joined the dancers, moving in the perfect harmony that comes only from years of partnership, Mei Lin reflected on the long journey that had brought her to this moment. From a frightened young woman with broken English to a confident ranch wife, mother, and respected community member, it had been a transformation built on courage, perseverance, and most importantly, love. In Marshall's arms, beneath the vast Wyoming sky filled with stars, Mei Lin Dao Vaughn was exactly where she belonged. No longer lost, no longer misunderstood, simply home. And in the years that followed, when newcomers to Silver Creek heard the story of the Chinese woman and the cowboy who defied convention to build a life together, they understood that it was more than just a romance. It was a testament to the power of seeing beyond differences to the heart of a person. For in the end, it wasn't about broken English or cultural divides. It was about two people who chose to understand each other when the rest of the world wouldn't try. And in that understanding, they had found everything.